Well, he's the contractor who leaked America's surveillance secrets to the world. Now, Edward Snowden is desperately reaching out to the international community to protect him from the wrath of the U.S. government. Transparency group WikiLeaks, which has a legal representative accompanying Snowden on his travels, announced today that he has applied for asylum in no fewer than 21 countries, including some of the very countries his NSA documents prove the NSA was spying on. Here's a look at a few of those nations and how they are responding. Let's start with the countries that flat out said no or are unlikely to grant Edward Snowden's asylum bid. Austria, Ecuador, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, and Switzerland all said that he must be present on that country's soil in order to ask for protection. Brazil won't respond. Finland hasn't processed the request. France says asylum is a non-issue. Germany and Poland said his argument isn't strong enough to be granted asylum. India flat out said no, and Snowden withdrew his request from Russia after President Vladimir Putin said he had to stop leaking documents in order to be considered. Now, to the best of our knowledge, Bolivia and Venezuela are the only countries to offer the former NSA contractor a ray of hope. Meanwhile, no information is coming out from China, Cuba, or Nicaragua in terms of requests or government responses. For the latest on Edward Snowden's international plight and Venezuela's reaction to his plea, I was joined earlier by RT correspondent Igor Piskunov, and I asked him what we know about these asylum bids.
Well, Snowden's sent requests to around 21 countries at this time, and 10 have already officially given the red light, including Brazil and India, and 8 EU member states, including Spain and Germany. And they're saying that under their rules, all political asylum applicants have to be on their territory. And since Snowden clearly isn't, he's still stuck in that transit zone at Sheremetyevo Airport, that they're still not able to begin processing of the request. The same goes for Ecuador, which became the first country which he turned to with the request. And we've heard from the Ecuadorian president, who said that by their rules, Snowden has to be at least on Russian territory. And since he's not, then they're also not able to begin processing it.
Now, he has applied for asylum in over 21 countries. Of course, it only takes one of those countries in order for him to potentially escape the U.S. justice system. But one of those countries that has been, as I understand it, thinking about giving him asylum is Venezuela. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro had this to say to RT Spanish today.
This young man has to be protected by the international community. He dared with dignity to tell the world that there are mechanisms to spy on the world, even on your own allies. If Snowden stays alone, he will be destroyed. Protecting Snowden, we will protect peace.
Meanwhile, also, Evo Morales, the Bolivian leader, went ahead and made another statement. If you would go ahead and fill us in on what Evo Morales had to say.
Well, Evo Morales also said that their country is basically ready to grant political asylum to Snowden, but if they received an official request for him. Earlier, the same, or at least everybody thought that the same went for Venezuela, since its president said that Snowden had a great chance of getting political asylum there, but he's still saying that they have also not received a request from him. In fact, well, as the Venezuelan president was here in Moscow, everybody expected him to take Snowden along with him to Venezuela, but that didn't happen. He is saying that they're not afraid of pressure from Washington, that they're used to this pressure in the exclusive interview to RT, but he's also saying that if he did receive this official request from Snowden for political asylum, he'd have to weigh everything out first and see what the reaction would be, both in Venezuela and abroad. So he's, despite being obviously sympathetic to Snowden and his revelations, he's still being very cautious about this whole issue.
Now, Igor, no matter what the ultimate outcome is, whether any one of these 21 countries decide to, in fact, grant him asylum, the fact is that he's still kind of caught in this catch-22, where he can't leave and enter into Russia because he does not have a valid visa, but he also can't leave the country and fly elsewhere because he doesn't have a U.S. passport anymore. So is this just a symbolic kind of measure, or what would be the next step in this asylum process if he is granted it?
It's really hard to predict what will happen next, because Snowden is clearly stuck in this transit limbo, as it's been called by world media now, basically in the spotlight of global media for the past week. But at the same time, nobody really knew exactly where he was, since we did know that he arrived to this transit zone at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow from Hong Kong with this invalid passport and accompanied by a WikiLeaks representative. But then for the whole week, nobody pretty much knew exactly where he was. We heard from President Putin, who confirmed that Snowden was in the transit zone. In the beginning of the week, we've heard from Foreign Minister Lavrov, who said that he never crossed the borderline. So the rest was mostly speculation. And now that, well, the 10 countries that he applied to have already given the red light, so the list is going shorter, and he had to retract the request for political asylum from Russia after hearing what Putin's conditions were to this. So the list is growing shorter, and it seems that, well, there's some chance of him receiving in Ecuador. It seems there's a chance of him getting political asylum in Venezuela and Bolivia, but we'll really have to see how the story is going to work out next.
This story certainly has taken a lot of twists and turns over the past few days, and it is a story that we here at RT will continue to follow along with our correspondents over in Moscow, Igor Piskunov reporting from Moscow.